Hello, everyone. Welcome to Conservation Nebraska and UNO Sustainability's event with our guest speaker, Dawaune Lamont Hayes. My name is Dakota Stock. I am an AmeriCorps member serving with Conservation Nebraska. I'm so happy to be here with you guys. Thank you all for taking the time out of your Tuesday night to learn from Dawaune and just listen and be a wonderful human being. We appreciate you so much. While we're waiting for people to join, I'm just going to give a little background about what Conservation Nebraska does, just in case you don't know. It's a nonprofit that is all across the state of Nebraska, and as conservation directors, there's about 20 of us. We go into our communities, whether that's Scotts Bluff or Omaha or South Sioux City, and we kind of figure out what those direct communities are interested in environmentally and what we can do to kind of inspire and educate freely to the public in those different areas. So Omaha is a fun one. I like it because there's so many different areas of environmentalism that we can tap into. And this event I've been so excited to do with Dawaune because I think it's a really unique and just different topic that I haven't really learned or looked too much about and he's really going to address what we can do in our own lives to be more regenerative. So that's super neat and super different. So yeah, here we go. Just a slight background for Dawaune. He'll talk a little bit more about it, but he has his bachelor's degree from Creighton in journalism. He got that in 2016. He was formerly the communications manager for the Union of Contemporary Art, and he is currently the director of NOISE, which stands for North Omaha Information for Everyone. So he's here to educate us. Thanks, Dawaune, so much for being here. One short disclaimer, everyone, you are muted and you cannot be seen. So if you're drinking tea or laying in your bed, we don't know. And lastly, if you have questions throughout the presentation, Dawaune's super excited to answer those, but just make sure to post them either in the Q&A or the chat, and he'll answer them at the end of his presentation. Thanks so much for being here, Dawaune. You can take it away.
Thank you so much, Dakota. And hey, everyone, thank you for being here and taking time on your evening to join us. I'm super excited to be here. This is something, a subject that has been really close to my heart as I've learned a lot about it over just the last few years. And you might be wondering, like, okay, you worked in communications and journalism. Why are you in this space right now? And I think what we're going to start with is actually some vocabulary, and this this is honestly communications. My background in communications led me into this work, honestly, because of learning about communication systems and how we relate to each other, and then in that process, you start thinking, like, how do you relate to the world? And so I'm just going to kind of walk us through some questions and then walk through some vocabulary. You know, what are the words we use to describe who and where we are? And that's really important because words shape our thoughts and decisions, and they shape our perspectives on each other. And when we use specific words to describe ourselves or our environment, that then shapes our relationships. What are the new words we'd like to use? There are many words that don't exist yet, and there are new terms and titles to describe our relationships and our ways in the world that we can make up words. And in English, we see that a lot, actually. But our vocabulary helps us transform our behavior and our environment. And in communications, in journalism, you know, the words you use to describe a neighborhood, a community, a person, you know, saying someone who is formerly incarcerated rather than saying convict, or using a description of like people who have encountered poverty rather than poor people. It puts people first, or it puts the environment first, and we at NOISE really try to reflect on that a lot as well. And then in my own personal life is how I've been able to think, okay, what am I trying to describe, and let me put that first, and then find other words to describe it later. Which moves us into into some vocabulary. And one of my favorite things about vocabulary and communications and language is etymology. And etymology is the study of the roots of words. It describes like breaks them down and breaks them apart. So before we get into regenerative economy and regenerative principles, let's start with the very first part of that word, which is re. And re is it's word forming element, but it means to back to the original place, again, anew, once more, and as well as undoing. And I think that's really important because we're in a place right now, like, so if you put re on anything, recycle, anything else, it's really thinking about like going back, originating, starting over, a purpose of a restart. Eco. So eco takes its root from oikos in Greek, and it means refers to the relationship to the environment and man's or human's relationship to it, as well as the family unit. So I like to think of eco whenever I hear it to be like, okay, home, family, people, relationship, my direct network, those things that are around me, because sometimes we'll hear like ecology, ecosystem, and think, oh, well, that's outside stuff. When we bring it back to a local place, it has that connection. This reference down here with family, slaves, farmland, and all property, that was directly derived from Greek social ecology. And then bio, things that are based in the environment. I think I'd change this one a little bit, but this is from Biomimicry. But designing and building structures and thinking about how it relates directly to life itself. So if we have eco, then what is an economy? And nomos takes is Greek as well, meaning management, law, and principle. So oikonomos, or economy, the original form, means the management of the hearth and home. So when we're talking about the economy, we need to preserve the economy. We need to get the economy going. COVID has had a massive impact on the economy. Then if we bring it back to the management of the hearth and home and really seeing that way, it's that starts with our bodies, that starts with our homes, our neighborhoods, and it expands. And what kind of economy is what we're here to talk about, and how these can move forward. And so with regenerative, to start anew. So with regenerative, to generate, create, regrow, renew, restore. I really love the healing by natural supplementation. That was another definition I'd found. And so if we take all these roots and then we put them together, we understand the roots of economy, we understand the roots of regenerative, then a regenerative economy is a universal patterns and principles that the cosmos, like literally everything around us, use to build stable, healthy, and sustainable systems throughout the real world, and use as a model for an economic system design. So if we are able to reflect on the world around us, and we understand where those words come from, and we see that, okay, well, everything else seems to be working on this scale of balance and shared relationship and symbiosis, then why can't our economies do the same? And the organization called the Capital Institute came up with this awesome circle, and they have a ton of information on their website called the 8 Principles of Regenerative Economy. And I'm going to kind of walk us through this. I came across the 8 principles earlier this summer by way of Twitter and various other people that I really enjoy following. And I love this idea of a regenerative economy, because right now we're in a position where we recognize our economy is kind of falling apart in a lot of ways and is not sustainable. And we don't want it to just be sustainable where it just kind of keeps going and that's just how it moves. We need something that is ultimately restorative, that ultimately provides us more, and that we provide back to in a way of beyond sustenance, because right now we recognize there's severe degradation of ourselves, of our communities, of our environment, of our water and air, and a regenerative economy asks us to stop and reflect on our relationships, and you'll see relationship in here quite consistently, in order to position us in a place where this economy is again, we're caring for our home. So the 8 principles here are: in right relationship, view wealth holistically, innovative, adaptive, responsive, empowered participation, honors place and community, edge effect abundance, robust circulation, and seek balance. So the subsequent slides will kind of break these into different examples. Using some photographs I've taken over the summer, and then just my own kind of commentary and exploration of those. Okay. Here we are. Great. So first one, in right relationship. The first definitions are derived from the Capital Institute's website, and then the bold are some of my suggestions, commentary, and things, and kind of my interpretations of these things. I think when we talk about principles, they can seem really lofty, and they're meant to be something to strive for. So when we're talking about adopting principles, it can be difficult sometimes to find how they translate into life. You're like, yeah, that's like a really good idea, but like, how do we actually even begin there? And so that's what I'm using these slides to explore. And definitely feel free to drop comments and feedback. I'm gonna go through these. I will be able to share this presentation with anyone if you're interested. But then I want to give some time uninterrupted after this, just to like, okay, you got a lot of information, let's talk. So number 1, in right relationship, humanity is an integral part of an connected web of life, which there is no real separation between us and it. So literally, like, when we spend time outside, we lay on the ground, we see how the world only moves as fast as we do. Activities like bird watching, gardening, composting, things that make us a part of the ecosystem and the ecology of our environment, can be as simple as just watching what's happening. Because when we're in our cars and we're driving everywhere, we're hustle and bustle, our relationship to the environment is just a means of getting somewhere, rather than every time I'm driving, I'm affecting my environment. Every time I'm walking, I'm affecting that environment. We are a part of, not apart from. And it's interesting that, we'll say outside as if it is away from us. Like, yeah, we may be inside of something, but outside is always here. Yeah. Anyway. 2, view wealth holistically. True wealth is not merely money in the bank. Recognize multiple kinds of wealth or capital, including social, cultural, living, and experiential from a place of abundance. I think this is really important when we're talking about how we're going to move forward from the impacts that COVID has really had, because I know I don't have a lot of money, and I know other people are like getting to the end, and like you were seeing evictions, we're seeing really high rates of unemployment. We're recognizing that we're not getting very much assistance from the federal government. So like, what's our response? And we still need our needs met. So if we are counting on one form of wealth to determine our health, then it will be compromised once it is compromised. Once that form of wealth is compromised. So if we are able to diversify what wealth means and looks like, and have a stronger relationship with social, cultural, living, and experiential, which is free, mind you, in a lot of ways. Storytelling, music, dance, food, cultural practices, language, all of those things contribute to forms of wealth that may not translate into dollar signs. And examples of that, this picture in the background is actually, we had a donation-based farmers market this summer on 24th Street. We really wanted to bring a farmers market to North Omaha, that was on North 24th Street. We recognized that, especially this year, income as a barrier. And we also wanted to, how do you introduce new foods to people's diets if they have to pay for it? And if they don't have a direct example, just be like, hey, you can take it, try it. If you don't like it, then throw it outside. And that's what happened. New people came. We have had about 70 folk, an average of 70 people a week for the very first farmers market. There were other farmers markets in the past, but this was our first new revamp of it, and doing this specifically donation-based approach with Big Garden, City Sprouts, Big Money Urban Farm, Mullen Hill Farms, and we had a few other vendors that came as well. Mutual aid groups, book clubs, hiking groups, and knowledge networks. I use the term knowledge network to describe friends and people who, I have some friends who love talking about regenerative stuff. And so we just get together sometimes and geek out and get on a Zoom call and talk about a subject. It's really informal, but we share the research and what we're looking at. And again, what we're recognizing is that the social, cultural, experiential, and informational capital that is just as, if not more valuable. I paid lots of money to go get a journalism degree from Creighton, but not everyone needs to do that. We can democratize and remove those barriers because we recognize that the information and those experiences are inherently valuable. Okay. Innovative, adaptive, responsive. The qualities of innovation and adaptability are critical to health. The most fit is the one that fits best. This is in reference to Darwin's survival of the fittest. It's often misquoted, and this is something that Daniel Lassie mentioned in his talk last time. It's about adaptability, and the fittest is really who is able to innovate and respond to their environment. It's not always about strength, because there's environments where being bigger is not better, or being more forceful will not yield you longer life. So, I put the web here because, spiders and other animals will make a habitat anywhere. They're like, I have the tools, I will figure out how to make it. And having that similar mentality, what are the limitations and what is the need? Start there. For example, we need affordable habitats, and I've been using habitats instead of housing very specifically because we recognize housing is a form of habitat, but how we build housing is degenerative in a lot of ways. So, and there's a lot of limitations because of codes and certain processes that we've done and have made and put and documented, and then we say, oh, well, we can't do affordable housing because it's this way. And we're like, well, we need it. That need hasn't going away. It's actually increasing as we see evictions increase this year. And then as natural disasters take more housing away, we're going to need to get creative and not rely on our usual methods, because if those usual methods were going to provide us what we needed, we would already have it. So there's that. Empowered participation. All parts must be in relationship with the larger whole in ways that not only empower people to negotiate for their needs, but also enable them to add unique contribution towards the health and well-being of the larger whole. People want to be a part of the solutions that are affecting them. Refrain from prescribing and instead listen and support where you can. Remove yourself if you're not the right messenger, and create space for others to speak up and out. This is so important. Whenever we're trying to cut, if someone tells you, this is what you need to do, but you're like, you didn't even ask me what's going on. You didn't ask me what I'm doing. And this is a really important point about healthcare. Often we're quick to prescribe without asking, so what do you eat? Okay, why do you eat that? People are like, oh, you're just a bad eater, you're just eating badly, so just change that. But there's lots of reasons. Maybe that's all I know. It's comforting to me. It's all I can afford. It's all what's in an area that's accessible to me. I know I have insensitivities to other things, so this is the only thing that I do eat. there's lots of layers to that. And I think when you start working with people instead of for them, then you're able to help them see where they are best able to take a hold of their agency in addressing, and an empowered participation within systems, organizations, teams helps people feel valuable and be able to contribute to the greater whole, rather than just being subjected to it. 5, honor community and place. Nurture healthy and resilient communities and regions uniquely informed by the essence of its individual history and place. This is actually a picture of my mother and one of the seniors that she works with. They did raised garden beds this year, and something that's really beautiful about that is that you have all this senior living around there, and many of them hadn't had gardens since they were children. And so they were able to, by creating this communal space, she was able to learn stories, and they were able to share histories, and they were able to learn more about each other. And then all of the programming that followed throughout the season was informed directly by the residents. It wasn't, oh, we're going to do this for you. It's saying, hey, we have these tools available. We have this knowledge available. What would you like to do? And so, really applicable ways we can integrate these things into our lives are through community gardens, on-site workshops, which are like, you're going to be in the place that you're addressing. If we're going to like build something, we're going to build it at the place. Neighborhood block talks, which are like going for a walk around your neighborhood and identifying areas that might be of concern, like broken sidewalks, potholes, abandoned homes, trash, debris, things like that. Walking tours, historical walking tours, like on North 24th Street. People walk down the street and learn about the place and get a better sense of what is there and how it got there and why it's in the condition that it's in, rather than just driving by and being like, that's what it's like. Wild plant identification. We have all kinds of wild plants that we don't know what they are, but we call them weeds because it's not grass, when in a lot of ways grass is the weed, but we'll get into that. And that just helps build local knowledge and understand the local applications of these wild plants. And then surveying and ideation, which is like, asking people questions and then helping generate ideas and then making those ideas present so then you can continue to bounce them off of each other. And if you engage your neighbors and ask them a general question, like, what should we have on the street? And people bounce ideas around, you can come up with some really creative solutions that you may not have thought of. 6, edge effect abundance. This is actually a picture of a bag of maggots. And I really like this. I picked this picture for a very specific reason. Creativity and abundance flourish synergistically at the edges of systems where the bonds holding the dominant pattern in place are weakest. I love this term, and I think about this a lot, because when you are in the center of where the systems have come from, it becomes really rigid. So the further you get away from it, you start to see these really creative responses. And for example, here is a plastic bag that was full of something that was biodegradable, and here is nature finding a response. And so I put this point about like waste is a myth, trash is a lie. Nature knows no scarcity, only abundance, and unexpected places can inspire new ways of living. I'd say waste is a myth, trash is a lie, because in nature, there's no such thing. Yet somehow in human society, we've determined that there is a such thing as waste because it's no longer useful for its intended purpose. And when we start treating we start treating our environment like that, and then we start treating objects like that, and then we start treating each other like that. We can point to incarceration, high levels of incarceration. We can point to excessive landfills, and how we don't have composting, for example, but we have a longer 10-year trash contract. You can point to how we'll demolish homes rather than disassemble them and take the parts that are useful so that we can make new homes with them. But then we also say things like new housing is expensive, and it's like it's expensive because we don't reuse anything. or take the time to reuse. And there's lots of layers to that, but this is an example of like, let's look at the communities and the people who may have been disenfranchised, who may not be in the mainstream, and see how they've adapted and responded. Something I recognize is that, especially like here in North Omaha, there are people who have very little money to their name, but have gotten really creative when it comes to transportation, housing, and their jobs and services, because they've learned to adapt when the system, for example, was not going to permit them to be present. 7, robust circulatory flow. Circulation of money and information and the efficient use and reuse of materials are particularly critical to individuals, businesses, and economies reaching their regenerative potential. This kind of touches on what I was just referring to earlier. Free information is essential. As a journalist, as a person who has gone to a private university and learned these things and then now works in public information, people cannot change what they don't know, and information can be the cheapest way to make change. So oftentimes we want to throw money at things because we think that's just what's going to make something change, when really it's just, if people knew, then they would be different. And that's where you might have to get creative about how you get the information across, putting it in the newspaper, how many people are subscribed. So find people where they are, create new signage, translate the message into languages and terms and ideas that are accessible to that group, that they identify with. And then share ideas, make them accessible, and you'll see transformation. Oftentimes in narrative, especially about places like North and South Omaha, low income communities of color and things like that, is like, oh, well, they're just that way. And there is a poor narrative about, well, that's where all the crime is, and it's just that way because that's how those people are. When one, that's not true, and two, there's so much more that people would do if they knew. And often the critique of communities comes from a position of privilege because, well, I've had education, I've had these access, my life was hard, but I've had these other things. And we have to, one, remove ourselves from the prescription of other people, and two, reflect on, well, what does somebody need? And if it's let's take money away from it. What does money get you access to? The resource, the information, the food, the housing. Okay, well, can we teach someone how to build? Can we teach someone how to grow? Can we get the information to the individuals so that they again have that participatory empowerment to be able to affect that change long term? And then last but not least, seeks balance, efficiency and resilience, collaboration and competition, diversity and coherence, small, medium, and large organizations and needs. Oftentimes when we're talking about the future, we're talking about it's got to be either or. And life is not either or. Oftentimes we're striving for, we're trying to do both or all things at the same time. And, push and pull a practice, never perfect, but moving toward better. Nothing will ever be in total balance, but that's where the work comes in. Something that Daniel had mentioned in his presentation that I appreciate is I think it's in Buddhism that balance equals death, where because that's where the ultimate equilibrium is okay, everything is at perfect balance when you're dead. So in that process, you're always negotiating, but that is where that seeking balance and you'll never truly achieve balance, but seeking it is where the tension, the momentum, and the movement come in and take place. So let me see here. Great. So I take all of those principles and I put them into a couple examples of some words that we can reflect on that embody some of these regenerative things. Biomimicry, the design and production of materials, structures, and systems that are modeled on biological processes. Permaculture, which is a very similar to biomimicry, but it's really rooted in looking at utilizing patterns and resilient features observed in natural ecosystems and using them for agriculture, rewilding, and community resilience. And then organic architecture, designing buildings and structures that reflect and are in harmony with our environment. And so if you look into these studies of biomimicry, permaculture, and organic architecture, you can really start to see how these regenerative principles are applied and integrated into all facets. These are some pictures of my community. So I just said a bunch of words, but let's look at pictures and see how those things could apply to this building or this lot, or how the nature responds. This is a nest that I built based with a bunch of sticks and debris and grass and things in my neighborhood, and just put it all together. And it's a habitat of sorts. Is it up to code? Not at all, but it's a response to into the environment. Fantastic Fungi is an incredible film, and I highly recommend it. And then Abstract, The Art of Design on Netflix is a great way to learn more about different styles, forms of design. And there's a few that are about bioarchitecture and bio-based design. And then this is a slide about me. If you want to follow me on Twitter or Instagram or email me, you can do that. But I'm going to stop sharing my screen and come back here, because I just said a lot of words at everybody, and I would love to hear input, feedback, questions to respond.
Thank you, Dawaune. Wow, I took so many great notes. Thank you for that. You can tell that you're a journalist because of the beautiful way that you say things. It's so neat. We already have 2 questions. And while we're reading those off, you guys, I do want to let you know there's an intimate enough group of people where if you want to speak your words, you can definitely raise your hand and I can allow you to talk. If you would rather have like a conversation rather than typing it, we can definitely do that. But I'll start asking these questions first. So Martin is wondering, which do you consider the difference between circular and regenerative economy?
They're actually very intimately related. That's why I believe the regenerative was done in a circle to really tie those things together and bring the circular economy. So I see regenerative economy as a more just like a more detailed response to the circular concept. Again, it's about like, how are we putting back? So circular can be more isolated in the way of like, this goes from here to here to here to there. Regenerative is like, we want to close that loop as well as continue to add more to it. So that could be the slight difference, but I really see them as totally integrated because it's important. Like, nature is circular and regenerative, so why aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, as you were saying, it's kind of like that vocabulary, right? It comes back to that similar, maybe slight differences, but yeah, it's very similar. Another one that he asked is, could we consider roof gardens as on our community and place?
Yeah, definitely. So I've been I was a board member of the Urban Design Review Board for a couple of years, and we end up having conversations about rooftop gardens quite often because, green roofs we're seeing them all over the world in response to the amount of the urban heat island effect, and how we have this surface area that just produces more heat. So why not add gardens and ways to cool and cleanse water so that when it hits the ground and goes to recharge groundwater and in adjacent tributaries, that it's better than how it got there. And often the excuse is, oh, we tried that, it was messy, it didn't work out, we're not going to do that. But we really have to get over that type of thinking. Okay, you tried it once, it didn't go well, so you never do it again. And especially when we recognize that this could be a model or a way to do things better. And that's where I find that we've come to the stagnant part. So I'm going on a tangent from the rooftop gardens, but like it starts there. Like, yeah, if you want to put some grass on your roof, put some grass on your roof. You know, if you can do it at an apartment complex and just do small boxed raised beds, you can do it outside of a window with a little hanger that does herbs. You know, you can start really small, but just learn what you're doing at that time is you're recognizing that the place you're in can nourish, can flourish, and can sustain you as well as the environment, and not seeing it as a void. You see it as an opportunity.
Yeah, totally. When it comes to these like principles, I don't know if your mind works this way, but I feel like I kind of like start with easiest. Or would you, say certain ones are easier to start with in your life and certain ones are kind of harder?
So I really like these principles because they're really broad, and I highly recommend going to the Capital Institute's website or following them on Twitter and checking out like their descriptions, because they brought some really awesome minds together to craft that vocabulary. Honestly, I mean, being in right relationship, I like to start with the first one. Right relationship with whom? And honestly, it's right relationship with yourself. If you aren't treating yourself well, feeding yourself, drinking water, getting rest, taking a bath when you need it, and like truly relaxing, listening to how you think and what you in your decisions, challenging yourself, asking yourself questions. It can be really easy if we don't do those things. It can be really easy for us to direct that harm towards other people, towards our environment, just towards our surroundings. And if we're not in relationship with ourselves, we won't be right in relationship with other people, because we're not showing up as our genuine selves. And so I love this because it takes us into deep philosophies that we're reflecting on like, how do we negotiate being with ourselves? Because then if we recognize what our relationship is to ourselves, and that's how we can start to, make massive effective changes in the world. They say like, how are you supposed to love yourself if how do you love someone if you can't love yourself? And that's like a huge part of it. In the last few years, it's really taken the experiences of being by myself with myself and being like, okay, what am I here for? What is this about? Like what, in my 20s and in school, in my early 20s and in school and stuff, I was just moving, trying to like achieve some goal and never really spending time with myself. That it degraded me, my body, my mind, my spirit really quickly. And then it made it difficult to affect positive change around me because I wasn't whole. And I think starting there allows us to be able to even have the energy to fathom and to imagine the bigger things and to learn the information about the big problems to be able to tackle those things. I frequently have to remind myself to be still and relax, because you can't save the world overnight. And so when you're watching a YouTube video about climate collapse, you're like, like turn off all the lights, you know what I mean? Which is a place to start, but recognizing that, okay, I know I'm becoming aware, I'm becoming closer to, now that I know, let me rest, because I just traumatized myself. Like we have to recognize that all of this is trauma, and a lot of these are systems that we inherited, that we were taught to derive our value and our identities from. And so it's really difficult and hard to start to divorce ourselves from those things. And then when you get a styrofoam clamshell container, you might like freak out and you're like, the world, but you're like, it's yes, you will change that. The fact that you had the idea to do something different means you're on your way.
I like that. That was definitely, styrofoam was my first, I feel like, breakdown, where I was like, oh my gosh, this is so awful. Why do we have these, right? Such a great example.
Where does it go? And you're like, okay, don't touch me, don't talk to me, I can't go anywhere. Like, yeah, never order anything to go. Like, put it in my hand. You know?
Exactly. Yeah, it got to the point where my family, we'd go out to a restaurant and they'd be like about to ask for it to go. And I'm like, no, we're just going to put in napkins and stuff it in my bag. That's what we're going to do. I was so crazy about it. Peggy has a question. She says, great presentation. When we are talking with various groups about concepts that could be controversial, such as climate change, would you suggest using different words, such as changes in weather and how they impact you and your family?
Yes, I would recommend that because using language that is accessible to the individuals and does not turn them off to listening to the ultimate message is important. And there's some that's like, well, you got to say it how it is, but we also have to recognize that because of how these terms and these ideas have become politicized, that it's that like caring for the planet is of a political party. It puts us in a place where we're all affected by it, regardless if you believe it or not. So if I have to find a way for you to connect with the ideas and understand and like have it resonate for you, then let's do that, because we need you. Like, we need everybody involved in this process if we hope to survive. Like, this is a matter of like, do we want to live or not? Do we want clean air, clean water? Like, I do. I don't know about you. And I think it's important to start with like, do you like your water being clean? Do you like having air to breathe? Then let's do something to make sure that's always the case, because right now, how things are going, it is compromising that for many people, including us. And then show them local examples, whatever you can do to bring the context back for people and have them see it as something that affects them and that they can affect as well. Not just, oh, it's another problem, but also something that they can do something about. That is great.
Yeah, totally. I really like how you talk about the speed of kind of like the natural earth and how natural things move and how we are constantly moving so fast, whether that be like the metaphor of like how we drive in our cars so quickly. And it's crazy. I've been riding the bus a lot more, and it just slows down life. And even like you said, like walking on the sidewalk and seeing Omaha in this different way, noticing little raccoon tracks in the concrete or little things like that, where it kind of connects you in a different way and your days seem longer. And I don't know, even just being outside makes you a little bit happier, and I think that is the whole thing, is it sets you kind of right on the natural speed of time, rather than trying to go and get to different places and drive in a car 70 miles per hour. Like, I think we put a lot on our bodies and on our minds, and when we move so quickly all the time, it's just a lot against our natural code almost.
Certainly. And I'm reading books about the origins of Omaha and a practice of indigenous peoples and the Omaha tribe and things, and like think about being nomad, and like if you wanted to get from what's the equidistance of Omaha to Bellevue, like you walked. There was no other way to get there, you just, and for us, we're like, oh, that's so long and that sounds so like, but there was no measure of the time. You didn't have anything to compare it to. You just went and then you got there. And it was how many moons and how many suns, like that, and how far the bird flies. Like that's all you really had to measure our relationship. And I think something that COVID has really done is forced us to slow down and to spend more time with ourselves, with each other, in our environments, good, whether that be good or bad, to really encounter where we are. Because so often we're like to work, home, school, doing all these things, and rarely are we spending time to think about how we get there and why and what we see in between. And then recognizing that the spaces between where we're going have just as much effect on us as the destinations and our origins. And so, like, something I really try to do with myself and my team is like, take your time. Journalism is notorious for this as well, as like breaking news and blah, and, like trying to be jazzy and grab people's eyes. But at Noise, for example, we spend a lot of time being like, let's tell a good story. How about that? And so that might mean taking a few more days. That might mean talking to a few more people. That might mean a few more edits. But what we're putting out is quality, and it's meaningful, and it's reflective of where we are, rather than just getting it out because we want clicks or something. Like that way of determining value by transactions rather than value by impact I think that's foundational to economy, to the regenerative economy. Our economy at this point is transactions over quality and impact. Whereas we recognize, like, oh, this has a lot of impact, then we're not gonna have that transaction. This has a really high impact and heavy impact and toll on our health and our environment and those things. Nope, we're not gonna do that, and therefore we won't have the transaction. Then we would actually be able to like mitigate a lot of the issues that we have. But right now it's like, well, gas is cheap. Is it? Cheap in what regard? It might be cheap in the end transaction, but it's awfully expensive as far as time, energy, resources, impact that it requires to get it to the pump in the first place. And so if we start to turn our minds around with that, and that's can be really difficult in a time where our rent, I wish I could explain that to my landlord, this is, our economy is backwards and those types of things. And so convert that into housing and food at this time, it can be difficult. But that's where I see, local policy making and local mutual aids and these like knowledge networks. If you get more people buying into the ideas and recognizing how the inequities of our current system and seeing how we're inherently valuable, we don't have to wait for a title or a paycheck to determine our value, and that the more we know and the more we do together is our most valuable asset. That is when you see the largest transformation. That's when the most powerful social movements have taken place, is when people say, wait, I'm valuable simply for existing. Not because, yes, I'm fighting for the right to vote, but like I'm fighting for the right to vote because I'm valuable. Not that the vote gives me my value.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. There's this one song I was listening to recently, and it's this artist who's just speaking about, like, especially in times like these, we feel like the universe is against us. But he's like, think of all the things that had to come together for you to be here. Like the universe wants you here, whatever you want to call it, like a lot of things had to come together, and it's so true. So just try and keep that in mind, when you're having a rough day. That's what I think. Like, okay, it feels like everything is against me, but really, like, things are with us. And, our parents had to be with each other, and their parents had to be, and it just keeps going, right? And it's really incredible. I guess last thing, Dawaune, as we're getting close to 8 o'clock, I wanted to ask you what, when you go to be regenerative, and just getting into the transition of like living that every day, do you have a few first steps that you took when you began that?
Certainly. I started reducing my clothing and how much clothing I have, and picking things that mean more to me rather than having it because to simply have it. I used to work at Scout Dry Goods and Trade, and so like working in buy sell, when I worked at Forever 21, so I worked in fast fashion, which is like the epitome of everything wrong with the world and our economies and the environment, to moving into secondhand and repurposing. And then I started going to clothing swaps with friends and being like, if I want new clothes, like there's so much clothing in the world already. Why would I need to go buy something new? only time I ever buy like new shoes is shoes because my feet are really big and rarely can I find something my size. And I'm not a cobbler, so I'm on my way, you know. But you know, starting there, you know, like what do I have that's useful that I'm not using and I can provide to somebody else? And it can make us feel guilty, but don't feel guilty. You have something that's of value and of worth that can help. So ask. There's some great, really cool Facebook groups where people are like, hey, post something that you have or something that you need, and then follow the comment thread, and people will comment and reply to you or send you a message, and then you can just exchange that. And we're in a time right now where, you know, like there are people who have, you know, 20 tubes of toothpaste, and there's one person who's like, I need toothpaste. You know, like we have everything we need. So if we spend more time thinking, instead of thinking in this place of scarcity, I don't have enough, I don't have the right thing, and think, okay, well, I have something and somebody else has something. How can we exchange and share that wealth that we have? Then it helps us turn into our mind into a place of abundance and feel as if, you know, okay, if I can exchange, you know, I can fix your cabinets if you bake me a loaf of bread. Cool, because I don't have any money right now, but you need your cabinets fixed, and you can bake and you can bake. Like if we start doing those types of things in just our interpersonal relationships, our friends, our family, then our neighbors, and then our neighborhoods, we can have a really fundamental transformation, because what we're seeing right now is that COVID is getting worse. Things are shutting down again. And if we're expecting our old economy and the systems that we've relied on to be our safety nets, that's just not going to happen, like, to be frank. And instead of spinning ourselves into a panic, we can be like, wait, we're capable, we're humans, we're literally the most connected humans in history. We have access to the most information ever. We're the most evolved form of our species at this time. Let's use that to our advantage. Why are we like, let's not use old systems that we have obviously evolved beyond to dictate what our future will become. So share your clothes. This is my first step.
Start there. I like it. And just to continue on that, Martin is asking, you touched this, but he's asking, could you consider the life cycle of items is an important characteristic to analyze when we buy things?
Oh, yes, very much so. When I try to buy handmade goods whenever I can, especially locally made ones. So like local, actually I have few notes here. I'm glad you asked this question, because I didn't put these in the presentation, but these were just like my reflections. Think about where your food comes from, localize, reduce packaging, buy bulk, learn about cultural uses. 1 grain can do a lot. So like I have a big bag of oats. I make oat milk, I make oatmeal, I make oat flour, and then those have multiple uses. I put in protein shakes, etc. Adjust your transit, walk, bike, bus, carpool, things that slow you down and help you be more connected to your place, and then broaden your vocabulary, like we talked about earlier. Learn new words, because or make up one that might be more accurate descriptor of how you're feeling or what's going on or the ideas. Because someone said to me, like, many of the jobs of the future haven't even been invented yet. So that's the same with words. Like, what we're worried about what's happening next, like, just remember that it may not have been invented yet. So make it up. Like, but yeah, like to Martin's point though, considering the longevity of something is super valuable. I have a dulcimer that's a stick dulcimer that's handmade by a gentleman named Steve here in Omaha. He sources them from local wood, and he spends a lot of time crafting it. And I know that I can call him if anything happens to it. And you know, I spent like $250 on it. I've never spent that much on an instrument before, and I know they go much higher than that. But the value in investing in my community, investing in a new experience, creating experiences for other people, the durability, the quality, and then if anything happens to it, I can call and be like, hey, person who made my instrument, can you fix it? And you can. And so that $250 turns into something far more valuable than the price tag, and it's worth that investment.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know if you all have gone here. I found it yesterday, but the Made in Omaha store, it opened in the old market, and there's another one somewhere in Omaha, but wow, so neat, and it smells so good. They have so many candles.
I was just there on Sunday. I believe that. It's a great place. It's an example of, we have all this. So like, for example, holiday season's coming up. I'm gonna be a little biased. Don't give Amazon your money. Like, if you don't have to, don't. Because there's a lot of people locally and a lot of artists and a lot of incredible people here who could give you something that you have, that you're looking for, or you can give gifts of stuff that you're like, I have this, do you want it? And then ask somebody what they would like for a present. I know that might take the surprise away from it, but what it does is like, am I giving you something useful that you'll actually utilize instead of buying a sweater from Kohl's that you don't want? And then it just becomes another piece of fabric in a landfill. Like, if we start with gift giving. I think that's Dakota, like, where do you start? Start with gift giving. Give plants for a gift. Give something that you've made. Give something that you already own. Ask them what they want, and then find somebody who has it. Gift an experience. Because if we stop commodifying, like, gift giving can be a really sacred act, and it can be a really a beautiful practice and something really powerful that can transform how relationships and how we engage with each other. And if we take away the transactional element of that and root it in purpose and meaning and like in usefulness and like and beauty, then you can give one gift this Christmas and never give one ever again because that was the best one to give. And looking at gift giving as more of an opportunity to exchange, to exchange for the benefit of exchange rather than the transaction of it. So I'm sure your kids asking for PS5s and like that's what they want and you have it. I mean, go for it, I guess. But try, that's a lot of money. You can put it into something else, like property or growing food or a sewing machine so they can make their own clothes. I don't know, get creative.
Yes. Thank you so much, Dawaune. There haven't been any more questions. Is there anything else you want to add in our last few minutes with everybody?
I just want to say thank you. Thanks for hosting this conversation and allowing me to contribute. Oh, I have some books, like book recommendations, and I grabbed some of my books from the shelves. I'm just going to read these out to you, and then I'll send you the list, Dakota, that you can share with the group. But these are like resources that I've been referring to as just to help me. So this is Simple Prosperity, Finding Real Wealth in a Sustainable Lifestyle. I get most of these books from Jackson Street Booksellers. So support your local bookstore. Resisting Structural Evil, Love as Ecological and Economic Vocation. This is like kind of rooted in religion and reflecting on like Christianity and Catholicism and charity, and then our connection instead of dominion over the land, relationship with. Really good. I went to Jesuit school, and so we talked a lot about that. NeighborWorks, this is their practical solutions book. They literally have it's a whole book of projects for America's Community Development Network. And so they have stuff all about like public parks and pavilions and actionable case studies that you can reflect on. The NeighborWorks America, their website, you can find a ton of really awesome projects on there. Recreating Neighborhoods for Successful Aging. If the place is good for our most vulnerable, our elders and our young people, then it's going to be a more equitable place for all. So this type of you can just look into like aging communities or aging in place, those types of things, and you can find resources related to this. And then this last but not least, this was a book that was given to me, Designing with Natural Processes by Carolyn Dry. And it basically just reflects on some like biomimicry and a lot of the looking at natural systems and then using those to inform materials, styles of building, forms of construction. And so this is again, another like practical solutions. I really like to take these lofty ideas and bring them into like, okay, like how do you make something with it? That's what people really want to see. Because when you start making something and then you can show that like it's not expensive per what we use to deem value, then that's when we can start to see some of the massive ecological, economical, and social shifts necessary to move to a regenerative economy. So those are my last words. Pick up some books. Go to Dr. Street. Pick a book that sounds and helpful.
Thanks, Dawaune. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for all that knowledge, and your energy is so good. Just thank you for being here. A little tap into next week's event. It's on Tuesday, and Dawaune will also be there again. So if you guys enjoyed this, as I'm sure you did, he'll be speaking more about regenerative foods. Him and Gran Christensen will be there. So if you want to learn more specifically about that, a little more specific, yeah, join in. It's on Facebook. You can register on there. And thank you all so much to be here. We appreciate you all so much. Have a beautiful night. Thanks again, Dawaune.
Of course. Have a good night. See ya.
You too. Bye.